forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet. Where are we heading? What should we do?
Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. The world is one.
I was born in Afghanistan. The Soviet invasion forced my family to migrate to Pakistan before moving to...
There are many other...
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett and these are the top stories this hour. President Joe Biden signs a law effectively banning imports from China's Xinjiang in response to concerns about forced labour as US companies find themselves caught in the diplomatic fray. More than 2,000 flights are cancelled globally as concerns grow over the Omicron variant, which accounts for more than 70% of new coronavirus cases in the United States. The Indian government says a study is underway to determine the efficacy of vaccines used in the country on the new Omicron variant. Ecuador becomes the first country in the world to make coronavirus vaccination mandatory for all, including children as young as 5. Snipers and motor rifle brigades from Russia's military hold military exercises close to the Ukrainian border amid tensions with the West.
Готов!
A former US police officer is found guilty of manslaughter after she shot dead a young African-American man, claiming she mistook her gun for her taser during a traffic stop. The United States has banned imports of all goods from China's Xinjiang region. Joe Biden signed a new law barring products being supplied from Xinjiang. The bill had unanimously passed through both the House of Representatives and the Senate earlier this month. The law imposes a near-blanket ban and requires suppliers to prove their products were not made with forced labour. Xinjiang is a large supplier of cotton and elements for solar panels. The United States is the first country to take this step against the world's second biggest economy. The law also requires the US president to impose sanctions on Chinese officials allegedly responsible for human rights abuses in the region. The Uyghur Forced Labour Prevention Act particularly targets three products. The first is cotton. Xinjiang is one of the world's major producers. The second is tomatoes, and then polysilicon, which is a material used to produce solar panels. An estimated 20% of garments imported into the US each year include some cotton from Xinjiang. The US State Department says the law gives the government new tools to prevent goods made with forced labour from entering US markets. It will, according to the State Department, further promote accountability for people and entities responsible for those abuses. With the legislation signed by the President, State Secretary Antony Blinken's calling on China to end what he calls genocide and crimes against humanity. Now, the move came despite lobbying from some US firms. Many American companies are dependent on Chinese suppliers, and some are already facing massive disruption due to trade disturbances caused by the coronavirus pandemic. In protest at the conditions in Xinjiang, Washington had already hit some Chinese officials and businesses with sanctions, including a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. A former US police officer has been found guilty of killing a young African-American citizen, Daunte Wright. The jurors convicted the Minneapolis police officer Kim Potter of 2 manslaughter charges for shooting a black motorist during a traffic stop. Potter said she mistook the gun for her taser during a routine traffic search.
We were trying to keep him from driving away. It just went chaotic. And then I remember yelling, "Taser, taser, taser," and nothing happened. And then he told me I shot him.
Kim Potter has been convicted of first and second-degree manslaughter in Brooklyn Center. She now faces a maximum of 15 years in prison on the first charge and 10 years on the second. Sentencing is expected to take place in February. Wright's family said in a statement they were relieved for some measure of accountability.
Oh my gosh. The moment that we heard guilty on the manslaughter 1, emotions, every single emotion that you could imagine just running through your body at that moment. I kind of let out a yelp because it was built up in the anticipation of what was to come while we were waiting for the last few days. And now we've been able to process it. We want to thank the entire prosecution team. We want to thank community support, everybody who's been out there that has supported us in this long fight for accountability.
Potter's defence lawyer has asked for her bail until the sentencing in February, but that request was denied. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison said the state would seek a fair sentence for Potter.
My thoughts are also with Ms. Potter today. She has gone from being an esteemed member of the community and an honored member of a noble profession to being convicted of a serious crime. I don't wish that on anyone. But it was our responsibility as the prosecution, as ministers of justice, to pursue justice wherever it led, and the jury found the facts.
Well, the incident happened in April when white police officer Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, was facing trial. After the verdict was announced, supporters celebrated, danced and played music outside court. Moving on to the Omicron variant, many countries in Europe are reintroducing mask mandates to curb the spread of the virus. We'll start with Spain, and the Spanish government announced on Wednesday that face masks will once again become obligatory in outdoor public spaces. This as Spain's coronavirus infection rate rose above 500 per 100,000 people. That crosses over the threshold considered very high risk by the Health Ministry. The mandate, which had been dropped only 6 months ago, is to take effect again from today. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez also announced a raft of other measures, including an offer to deploy the armed forces to help regions step up their vaccination rollout and put military hospital beds at their disposal if they're needed. Meanwhile, the northeastern region of Catalonia is poised to be the first Spanish region to reinstate a nightly curfew. Catalonia's regional government sought permission to close nightclubs, cap indoor restaurant capacity at 50% and try and slow the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, the latest of government restrictions have brought mixed reactions from the public.
Creo que la prueba del gobierno como medida un poco disuasoria de controlar la Navidad de alguna manera, pero es como medida express para que se vea que está haciendo algo que realmente no.
Well, Italy has also tightened COVID-19 rules to curb the surging infections. Under the new regulations, masks are mandatory in outdoor public spaces. The announcement came on the day Italy registered a record of over 44,500 new coronavirus cases. That's an increase of more than 70% from the previous week. All New Year's Eve celebrations have also been banned in order to stop the public from gathering in large numbers. Concerts and open-air events will be stopped till January the 31st. Discos and dance clubs will have to shut their doors. People who haven't been vaccinated will be barred from entering museums, exhibitions and other public places. Greece, meanwhile, has brought mask mandates for both indoors and outdoors into effect in order to slow the virus spread as the festive season really gets going. All public Christmas and New Year festivities have been cancelled. Incoming travellers have been urged to test themselves on arrival. Though over 16.5 million doses have been administered already, authorities have had trouble persuading some Greeks over 60 to take the jab. Authorities have imposed a monthly fine now of €100 to persuade the elderly to take at least one dose by mid-January. COVID-19 cases in the UK and France are rising at an unprecedented pace. The surge has been triggered by the spread of the highly infectious Omicron variant. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's given a Christmas Eve message strongly urging people to get vaccinated as what he called a wonderful gift to the nation. His statement comes as COVID-19 cases are on the rise in the UK.
We've been getting that vaccination that protects us and stops us infecting others. And I hope I can be forgiven for taking pride in the immense spirit of neighbourliness that the people of this country have shown. Getting jabbed not just for themselves, for ourselves, but for friends and family and everyone we meet. And that, after all, is the teaching of Jesus Christ, whose birth is at the heart of this enormous festival, that we should love our neighbours as we love ourselves. And so let's think of all those who are being good neighbours and thinking of others.
Boris Johnson this week rejected harsher COVID restrictions at the Christmas period. He focused on a drive to offer booster jabs to all adults by the end of the year. Last year, Boris Johnson did impose a stay-at-home order for some regions. This time, he's opted not to tighten the rules. On Thursday, the UK reported daily COVID-19 infections at a record level, but there have also been 2 studies and analysis from the UK Health Security Agency over the last 24 hours, which suggest that the Omicron variant is proving less severe in the UK as it spreads here. France is witnessing record numbers of COVID-19 cases as well. On Thursday, that was at 91,000 new confirmed infections. The country's battling its 5th wave of the COVID outbreak. French President Emmanuel Macron's urging citizens to be extra careful during the holiday season. The country's scientific advisory bodies warned the country could see hundreds of thousands of infections a day.
Bonjour à tous. Je vous retrouve en cette veille de Noël avec quelques petits messages à partager. En effet, ce sont des moments de retrouvailles, de gaieté, d'insouciance, de partage en famille ou entre amis. Mais cette année, une fois encore, à cause du virus, je vous demanderai d'avoir beaucoup de vigilance pendant ces fêtes. Alors la vigilance, c'est évidemment de continuer à avoir nos gestes barrières contre le virus. Le masque, se laver régulièrement les mains, tenir les distances, aérer régulièrement les pièces où nous sommes. Dès qu'il y a des symptômes, nous isoler et nous tester. C'est, même si vous êtes vacciné, de vous tester vous-même ou d'aller vous faire tester pour être sûr que vous n'êtes pas porteur du virus avant de retrouver vos proches, en particulier quand ils sont plus âgés.
Next to Ecuador, which has become the first country to make COVID vaccines obligatory for children as young as 5 years of age. It comes as the Omicron variant arrives in the South American country. The health ministry there says those with medical reasons will be exempt. Ecuador has a population of 17.7 million people. 69% have received 2 vaccine doses. Over 900,000 people have received a booster dose. The country's registered more than 540,000 cases of COVID-19 so far. More than 33,600 people have lost their lives, according to official data. Ecuador reported an Omicron case a week ago. The country's now made it compulsory to present a proof of vaccination to enter restaurants, shopping malls, cinemas and theatres. Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Indonesia and New Caledonia have all made vaccines mandatory for adults. And while the virus is advancing across the world, health experts and drug makers have provided some signs of hope.
Small victories were won in the fight against the Omicron variant of coronavirus on Thursday in data released by 2 British universities. Imperial College in London says the risk of needing to stay in hospital for patients with Omicron is 40 to 45% lower than for patients with the Delta variant. Meanwhile, findings from an Oxford University lab study suggest that 3 doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine are effective against Omicron. Oxford's findings are yet to be published in a peer-reviewed medical journal. They match those from rivals Pfizer-BioNTech, which have also found that a 3rd dose of their shots are effective against Omicron. The study on AstraZeneca's vaccine showed that after a 3-day course, neutralizing levels against Omicron were broadly similar to those against the virus's Delta variant after 2 doses. Although the early data is positive for the company, AstraZeneca said on Tuesday it was working with Oxford University to produce a vaccine tailored for Omicron, joining similar efforts from other vaccine makers. Imperial College researchers said the risk of any visit to hospital with Omicron was between 20 and 25% lower than with Delta. However, they added that the reduction in hospitalization must be balanced against the larger risk of infection with Omicron due to the reduction in protection provided by both vaccination and natural infection.
American actor James Franco has broken his silence on sexual assault allegations. He was accused by 5 women in January 2018 of inappropriate and sexually exploitative behaviour. 4 of them were students at his acting school. 2 of the students filed a lawsuit in 2019. James Franco has now admitted to wrongdoing.
Nearly 4 years after being accused of sexual misconduct, Oscar-nominated actor James Franco broke his silence on the claims, saying a sex addiction led him to sleep with students at an acting school he once ran. In excerpts from the Jess Cagle podcast made public this week, Franco said that while teaching, he, quote, did sleep with students, and that was wrong. He said he did not start the school to lure women for sex. In 2018, the Los Angeles Times reported 5 women had accused Franco of inappropriate conduct. In 2019, 2 women filed a civil suit against the star, accusing him of exploiting aspiring actors at his now defunct school and duping young women into shooting explicit sex scenes. Franco said he developed a sex addiction after he became sober from an alcohol addiction he developed at a young age. He agreed this year to pay $2.2 million to settle the 2019 civil lawsuit, according to documents filed in Los Angeles Superior Court. In the podcast interview, Franco said he has been in recovery from sex addiction since 2016 and has been doing a lot of work to change who he was after the allegations against him.
Author Charles Dickens' book, A Christmas Carol, is etched in the history of literature, and this is his intrinsic link to the Christmas season. His once modest abode has now been turned into a museum in London, which is showcasing special pieces this festive season.
Welcome to the modest abode of literary master Charles Dickens. The halls where he and his family celebrated Christmas in the 1800s. Probably the place where he conjured up all the imagined worlds for his books. This home is now a museum dedicated to celebrate his literary talents. It's hard to think of Christmas and not think of Charles Dickens' masterpiece, A Christmas Carol. So it's only fitting that these halls have been decked up especially for the festive season, replete with Victorian-style decor. Not just that, there are also some hitherto unseen personal artifacts on display for visitors this year, like this 180-year-old mechanical pen that was gifted to Dickens by his wife.
So one of the new items that we've got on display this year, just for Christmas, is an ivory pen and pencil holder, which Catherine, Charles Dickens' wife, gave to him for Christmas in 1838 while they were living in this house. It's engraved with an inscription that says, "To dear Charlie, from Kate, Xmas, 1838. And we think that Catherine probably engraved that herself with a needle.
This mechanical pen was part of a large collection donated to the museum in 2019. The museum is a treasure trove of Charles Dickens' ephemera, such as these illustrations by another one of Dickens' festive tales, The Cricket on the Hearth, a playbill for production of A Christmas Carol, one of probably the only theatrical interpretations of his famous tale that he sanctioned in his lifetime, as well as a letter written by Dickens to celebrate the sale of 6,000 copies of the book.
I think Dickens is still quite a big part of Christmas because of the feelings that he writes into his stories. That lovely feeling that we all have at Christmas, being with friends and family, enjoying good food, having entertainment, playing lots of games. Those things were important to Dickens in his own life, which is why he wrote them into his works. And I think that's why we still celebrate in that way today.
More than 250 years later, Charles Dickens and his works continue to be a big influence in the world of literature as well as pop culture. The Charles Dickens Museum at 48 Darty Street is like a window to the author's life, his world and times back in the 1800s. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Well, that's all we have time for on this edition. It is Christmas Eve, you may have noticed. We'll leave you with some pictures from around the world about how different people are preparing for Christmas in different ways.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across.
नमस्कार। दिवाली की शॉपिंग और ट्रैवलिंग से जनता की गाड़ियों पर काफी असर पड़ा है। गाड़ियों पर डेंट, स्क्रैचेस और वेयर एंड टेयर भी देखने को मिल रहा है, लेकिन घबराने की कोई बात नहीं। गो मैकेनिक, भारत की नंबर 1 कार सर्विस ऐप टॉप क्वालिटी कार सर्विसेज पर आपको दे रही है भारी छूट। तो देर ना करें और आज ही डाउनलोड करें।
Book now and get flat 500 off. Go Mechanic.
नमस्कार। दिवाली की शॉपिंग और ट्रैवलिंग से जनता की गाड़ियों पर काफी असर पड़ा है। गाड़ियों पर डेंट, स्क्रैचेस और वेयर एंड टेयर भी देखने को मिल रहा है, लेकिन घबराने की कोई बात नहीं। गो मैकेनिक, भारत की नंबर 1 कार सर्विस ऐप टॉप क्वालिटी कार सर्विसेज पर आपको दे रही है भारी छूट। तो देर ना करें और आज ही डाउनलोड करें।
Book now and get flat 500 off. Go Mechanic.
Joe Biden, now the 46th president of the United States, has a full plate in front of him.
Afghanistan has been the heart of American military power.
In a clear warning to China, India's military has now taken control of the country for 1 year.
Made it concerned. It says that it's likely to miss by around.
What was happening inside the virology lab in Wuhan?
One ship was able to freeze global trade.
A traditional recipe, and it's really very delicious.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you